According to verse 27, we're told, and he, referring to the Antichrist, shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, literally for 1/7. Now, an interesting implication of this is this. Many have thought that the event which will actually start the 7-year tribulation period, or if you want to call it the 7-year, 70th week of Daniel 9 that we're reading about here, that the event will actually start that will be the rapture of the church. That's not what the biblical text is saying. Instead, Daniel 9:27 is saying that the actual event which will officially begin that 7-year period of time will be the establishment of this 7-year covenant between Antichrist and the people of Israel in the Middle East. Then we're told, as we read on in verse 27, and in the midst of the week, literally in the middle of the week, in the middle of the 7. So it's talking here about what will happen in dead center of this 7-year period of time. What will happen after the first 3.5 years of this period of time have transpired? In the middle of the week, he, going back to Antichrist, shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. That implies that by this future period of 7 years, Israel will have a new temple, and they will have reinstituted the Old Testament sacrifices and offerings in that temple. And what's being revealed to Daniel here is that in the middle of that 70th week of Daniel 9, Antichrist will put a stop to the sacrifices and the offerings offered there in Israel's new temple. Other prophetic scriptures indicate that the reason he will do that is because at that point he will go in to the temple and commit an abomination. In fact, we're told here, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate, indicating that in the middle of this 70th week, he will commit what's been called the abomination of desolation. What that will amount to is he will enter into that temple, and he will set himself up there as God. Let me read for you where that is specifically stated, just one of several passages that indicate this. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, the Apostle Paul describes the same man whom we have called the Antichrist as the man of sin. We read in verse 3 of 2 Thessalonians 2, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day, the day of the Lord, shall not come, except there come a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." That is the abomination of desolation spoken of in Daniel 9:27. And so Daniel was told that right in the middle of this 7-year period of time, the Antichrist will enter into this new temple of Israel in Jerusalem, will put a stop to their Old Testament sacrificial system that they've reinstituted. And the reason he does that is because he wants to clear the way for the worship of himself as God, and he will set himself up in that temple as the true and the living God, make the bold claim that he is that, and then he will begin desolating the nation of Israel. The implication is he'll break his covenant with Israel and begin persecuting that nation worse than it's ever been persecuted in all of past history. Zechariah 12 through 14 makes that very, very clear. In fact, the last couple verses of Zechariah 13 indicate that things will be so terrible for the people of Israel during that period of time that 2/3 of the Jews will perish very quickly. Verse 8 of Zechariah 13, "It shall come to pass that in all the land, says the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the 3rd shall be left therein." In scope, this will be far worse than the Holocaust of World War II, as inconceivable as that might be. So that during the first half of the 70th week, which is saying during the first 3.5 years of the 7-year period of time, Antichrist appears to be Israel's great benefactor and protector. But in the middle of the week, he will turn against the people of Israel, break his covenant with them, and now become their great desolator as he commits this abomination which brings desolation his declaring that he is God, and now he goes to war against the people of Israel, plus against any believers who are in the world at that particular time. In Daniel chapter 7, we're told he'll wage war against the saints. And Revelation 13 declares the same thing. And that's why Jesus, in Matthew 24 that we looked at earlier, in verse 15, said, "When you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing in your holy place, then let them who are in Judea flee to the mountains. And you better pray that your flight is not on the Sabbath day." And he told them why, verse 21, "Because then will be such great tribulation, such as has not been since the world began or ever will be. And except those days be cut off, all flesh would perish. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut off." So what we have here is the 7-year period basically divided into two halves. In the first half, Antichrist appears to be the great benefactor and protector and friend of Israel. But in the middle of that 7-year period, he will turn against the people of Israel and begin desolating it severely. And that's why Jesus called then the second half the Great Tribulation, the likes of which there's never been since the beginning of the world or ever will be again. In other words, the second half of this 70th week of Daniel 9 will be the unparalleled time of trouble for the world.